Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Thomas. I am the founder and former founder and CEO of Averetek, a company that was a channel marketing automation platform. I built that company starting in 2000 and I sold it in 2019. I had a contract with the acquirer that lasted 2 years, and now I am off onto my next adventures. So I did, as part of the as being a CEO, I spent a lot of time thinking about um, how to build my brand. You are, by virtue of the title, you are the front of the company, and so that was something that I found myself having to grow into.
Awesome.
So I'm very interested to hear everybody else's perspective here.
Thanks so much for sharing. Mike, do you want to come next and share like a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've run a marketing agency remotely for the past 9 years. We were we were fully online before it was cool, or because of COVID, or whatever you want to call it. And in the last year and a half, I've started helping other marketers kind of build up their companies. So kind of in that solopreneur mode, to try and start building up their business. And so that's been more. It was more of a passion thing for me, just like the transformation of helping the individual versus helping Volvo sell another truck. I mean, who cares? But so, and for me, yeah, I mean, I think I've taken a bit of a different approach from the personal brand side of things. I don't I've tried to care about social media a lot, and I just don't. I've been like in and out of YouTube, in and out of Instagram, in and out of LinkedIn. And so kind of my sweet spot is a Facebook group that I'm working on, and then my email list. So that's kind of the two. So it's not a lot of front facing, but I think that those two assets, regardless of if you have social, I think if you have social, building your email list and some type of group where it's kind of an owned asset in that way, is super important, and it served me really, really well.
Amazing. And I think a lot of people will also appreciate that. Like a lot of people don't like social media, let's say, but know they want to still grow a brand. So I think a lot of people will really appreciate that insight as well. And Dani, like a lot of people might know Dani already. He's a crafts designer and an incredible human being in general. Dani, do you want
Thank you
to do
so
a
much.
quick introduction to yourself as well?
Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm the designer at Craft. Before that, I've been freelancing a lot, freelancing for a lot of years, and that's when I started looking into marketing because, like, as a freelancer, you can be the best designer in the world, but if no one cares about you, that like, what's the point? So then I tried to learn about like how to share my work, how to share like writing like case studies. So basically, I try to do everything that I can do, so basically others can find my work and figure out what I'm doing and make it interesting, and use Instagram, Dribble, all those like designer sites, or Medium.com, just writing case studies. So I try to use as many channels as possible, like Facebook groups, and basically just try to share how I work and how I think. So in case somebody is interested in like working together, then they can reach out. So that's how I started. And then InVision approached me. Like InVision is a design company, and I used to work there. And then the founder of Craft, also found Baron 5 case studies, and that's how we started working together. And that's the beginning of Craft. So yeah,
Amazing.
that's a short one.
I mean, and isn't that just like the exact thing which we're all hoping for? If we're kind of building a personal brand online, essentially we're building it to be noticed, to open up opportunities, to open more ways to kind of help other people, and to get opportunities like that. Dani, since we're chatting to you first, I'd love to start the questions. So the way this is going to work, I've got a few questions in mind, which I'm going to share with some of you guys, and we'll get the whole panel to share their thoughts and ideas. And then with about 15 minutes towards the end, I'd like to open up just for questions and answers. If anyone here has got questions they want to share with you guys. So Dani, just to start off with, you kind of mentioned it already, but yeah, what were your expectations in the start? Like when you first decided, I'm going to create a personal brand for myself, what were your expectations, and what kind of were your hopes for doing that?
Yeah, so I think when I started, I had to make some really tough decisions. So the first, I really had to look at my own work from like an outsider perspective, and that was hard because you're kind of treating your work as like your own child, or trying to look from a different perspective. So there was an evening, kind of an intense evening, when I sat down and tried to look at my work from like as an outside perspective. And you know what? I had to realize that my work was not that good. So that was the first thing that I had to realize. Okay, to be honest, looking at others' work and comparing it to my work as a client, from an outsider perspective, I had to realize that I have to improve my work significantly. So that was step one, to admit that my work still had to improve a ton in order to be in that league where I'd like to work at. So that was the first thing that I had to realize. And then I started, I started sharing my work. I started to improve, hopefully. So that was all great and nice. But then I had to realize that I'm posting on these designer communities, but people like within these communities are all designers, and designers don't exactly hire each other. So basically, I have to realize that even if I start sharing in my niche, in my designer community, no one will really hire me because I will get likes and upvotes and stuff like that, but no one will actually care to hire me. So then I started looking into, okay, if I post something here, where else can I post that content? Like, okay, I can write a Medium article. I think the Medium articles are like blog posts and more recognized and more shareable. But then I wrote a nice case study, but no one actually read it. So then what can I do? I started thinking, okay, if I have this case study showcasing how I think, how I work as a designer, and still no one cares, what can I do? And then I started discovering there are specific Facebook groups where you can post your content as a designer with potential clients. I collected a list of like 30 Facebook groups. So basically, if I posted a new designer, a new concept, or a new case study, I could go there and individually share this work. And of course, always check the Facebook group rules, like what you can do, if you can promote, not promote, like all of these things. But then I had to manually work to share my content step by step, and then sharing it on Twitter or Reddit, just like trying to go step by step. So it's not like writing your story or creating your work and just like posting it once and waiting, because that's what I thought how it works. I just create one thing, share it online, and everybody will just like look at it. Unfortunately, that's how it works. So you have to work physically and actually manually to post your content in different channels and platforms. And then the last step of this journey was like Instagram. At the time, Instagram started to become more and more popular, and not just for sharing like photography, but sharing your work and some design concepts and stuff like that. And I had to make a really big decision, because before that I used to use my Instagram as a personal, like just a private thing, sharing my travels, posting here and then, and just like not really caring about it too seriously. And it was a tough decision to make, that okay, I will use my Instagram for work. And of course, probably I lost quite a few like old university buddies and others who followed me, because like maybe my work wasn't relevant for them. But as I started posting about my work, like every single day, I posted for 2 years, every single day, no skipping a day, even if it's holiday, weekends, whatever. Like if you post regularly and have like a consistent, semi-consistent style, then you can grow. I grew my Instagram from like 600 followers all the way to like 30K within like 1 year. But I had to post every single day. And it was a conscious decision that yes, maybe my friends, some of my friends will unfollow me, or some of my family will unfollow me, or whatever. But if you have this goal, you can do that. Of course, you can create like another like Instagram account or separate personal and work. Like you can do all of those things, but it's just double the work. So at the moment, I just made this decision, and yeah, maybe in the future I might introduce like a personal one again to share those travel photos or other things. But yeah, so that's the overall story how I try to approach this.
Amazing. And like, I want to move on to our other panelists in just a moment, but something I think which is really important to highlight here is like the tenacity, right? Like the tenacity of not just sharing in one Facebook group or sharing one Medium post. It was like, I'm going to go share in 30 Facebook groups and like really get it spread out there. And the same with this, daily publishing. That's no easy situation to do, to publish daily every single day for 2 years. That's a lot of work, a lot of tenacity. So yeah, amazing job. And thanks for sharing that. I would like to let's bring in Mike. Do you want to share like how you got started, and if anything was similar to Daniel's approach?
Yeah, I think for me, I think when I started the process, which was more years ago, it was before I had any real self-awareness of myself in the business world. And I just had this thing where like I was like, well, I'm a smart guy. I'm going to put it out. I'm going to throw a ton of ads so that everybody sees my face. Everybody knows what this is going to look like. And that's going to be the thing, right? That's how I kind of theorized it. But ultimately, like, just like when you follow anybody on any platform, it's like you're busy and you don't really care about what anybody else is doing until it serves you until you need it, right? And so I thought that, hey, I'll just run a bunch of video view and engagement ads and I'll get 1 million views a month, and that will like skyrocket me into the stratosphere. But I didn't have a desire to create content in that way. I just felt like I have to do it because it's funny, you hear about, and coming from the marketing world, the shiny object syndrome, where a customer comes in and they're like, oh, I heard TikTok, let's do that now. It's like, you're a plumber. You don't need TikTok. You don't have the talent to be on TikTok. It's not going to happen. But for me, I was, at the beginning, I was really convinced that if I just made tons of stuff, run tons of ads, put it out everywhere, that was going to be the thing. And it actually turned out to be a podcast that brought me up to speed with where I wanted to be. So similar to Daniel, I eventually chose one, like I chose one thing that was going to be I'm going to do this super consistently and I'm going to get awareness for this thing. And so I published 89 episodes of the Market Me podcast. And that was over almost 2 years straight, once a week. So it was like 1 year and 3/4 or whatever it was, every Wednesday. And that was, just the production of that, like finding the guests, having everything edited, show notes. I mean, that was a crazy process, but I did find that doing something, there's that kind of idea, right? Doing that one thing for a year and just being super dedicated to it. What I found was people knew what to expect. They started to see me as like, oh, this guy's coming consistently with this thing. I can trust him. And I think I built a lot of credibility and a lot of trust by publishing it the way that I did, because, I've gone in and created some workshops, some YouTube series, some Instagram posts, but I never did it on a super regular basis until I started the podcast. And that was actually the thing that grew my email list the most significantly, brought me a ton of clients, because people would listen and take the ideas and say, oh, I want to use that idea for my business. I'm going to talk to him. And not that the listenership got particularly massive. It wasn't a huge show, but the people that were listening were the right people. And it helped me rapidly grow my business as well as build credibility. So that was kind of my experience versus my original expectations. But it's similar in that it was like that one thing that you did for a long time, all the time. And I think that was the thing that did it for me.
I love that. And I want to come on to Peter in just a second, but to answer this to you and Daniel, like, how did you decide, again, you on the podcast and Daniel on Instagram, how did you decide on making that your niche, making that your focus? Because there are so many things to choose from, right? How did you guys think about that?
Yeah, so for me, it was, I know that me giving a workshop where it's like lecturing is an absolute nightmare. It's super robotic. I've tried to record online courses before. I've spent a lot of money recording them, saw the finished product, and I'm like, no way. This is not going anywhere. I'm never publishing this on the internet. But I know that Q&A format, like that, hey, think on the fly, come up with the ideas, come up with strategies on the fly, was very good. And so for me, I was like, wait, what if I just give people free strategy sessions and I recorded it? That was it. For me, it was like, I know if someone's asking me about how to market, like as a hip hop artist, as a real estate agent, I had so many different guests who came on and asked me questions. And I was like, that was my sweet spot. So that long form Q&A, which was already working for me in a panel or in this type of format, I was like, I'm just going to record it, give people the information and the strategies for free. I get the content, win-win. And being true to like what I'm good at from a content standpoint, that was kind of how I decided on it.
Amazing. And Dani, was it a similar process for you?
Yeah, so for me, I tried to pick a platform because, as mentioned before, I tried different platforms. I tried to pick a platform which is really visual, and of course, like Instagram is kind of visual because, like, for design, showcasing your designs and interactions and video and all these things. Like, I want something to be like really visual, and also something that is used by a ton of different people. So not just designers, not just like one specific niche, but even like engineers, like potential clients, even friends. Like, I wanted something that is really, really wide. So in case my content gets recognized or some kind of like recommendation engine behind like some tools, basically they can be discovered and I showed up in discover section. So a lot of unknown or like new people can actually meet with my work and see my work. So that was like a sweet spot of this is visual, this is easy to understand, and it can be like accessible for a lot of different type of potential clients, potential colleagues, and partners. So That was how I decided after trying out many different platforms.
Amazing. Let's come to Peter now. Peter, they've just introduced like how they kind of started their thought process around personal brands. Like how did yours begin? And I know you had the company as well, right? Was it? Do you want to tell us the beginning of yours?
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to say, and I'm really enjoying this, by the way, is that you listen to Mike and Dani. They're both saying it was about the work, daily, every day, whatever it was they did, the podcast or the Instagram. It was like I did it every day, and it reminds me that there's no such thing as a quick get rich scheme, and there's really no such thing as I'm going to post one thing and be an Instagram wonder or whatever. I mean, you have to ask yourself what the shelf life of a tweet is, because it's about, I don't know, 6 seconds, right? So that's that kind of showing up every day. That's a good thing to kind of keep in mind about this. And the other thing I'm thinking about too is that, marketing there's never one thing that works. It's like fishing. If you have a lot of bait in the water, you're going to get a little hit here, a little hit here. You may have a whale on one, but it really rarely works that way. It's a lot of doing, lots of little things that create that marketing momentum. Hardly ever one campaign that really generates that kind of velocity that we're all looking for. So anyway, thanks guys, because I think this is really awesome to hear. As far as why I chose to do it, I started out, and I mean, my trade is I was a software engineer that happened to start a company that just happened to have to hire people because I had too much work for just one person. And then all of a sudden it became kind of more than that. And I didn't go back and go, I'm going to write a business plan and create this amazing channel marketing company. It wasn't like that. It was much more organic than that. But it forced me into a different role, which was I had to, now I'm the boss. I'm not just writing code. And then at some point, the guys that I hired to write code told me I wasn't allowed to write code anymore because they're so much better than me. So you got to do something else now. And I looked at it and said, okay, well, I was sort of a reluctant front man in that sense, and I had the Imposter Syndrome. If you ever, have looked that up, it's like, geez, I mean, there are CEOs and then there's me. And I'm not like, you know what I mean? Like they're CEOs and I'm just this guy, so I had a lot of that going on too. But I did realize that at some point my clients and the market expected to talk to a CEO. I had the title of president for my company. I mean, I never even had that title, and so I retitled myself at some point and I sort of stepped out, and I did it with, again, a lot of bait in the water. I did a book. That was one thing that took a long time. I see Giovanni lost it. Can you guys hear me still, Tom?
I can still hear you.
Yeah. Okay, great. So yeah, I mean, I had a couple of tactics. I did a book. We had a podcast series that we would record. We did like an office hours series. I would invite my clients and then I would do the recording, and then I would also strip the audio out and throw it up on, Apple Podcasts at that point. A blog, we did the social thing, but I'm with you, Mike. The social is a wheel. You just got to push uphill all day long. And I really didn't enjoy it. I don't think it's particularly effective. It was already noisy then, when you know what I mean? And now it's really, really noisy. So I think that's kind of, you can look at it like this. You can look at like wide and deep tactics, right? And I'm a person that would rather have, 2 friends than 20. So for me, the deep deep tactics worked better. I did a lot of smaller roundtables where I would invite people in and just make that connection, because there is something about being the person who brings people together. Like everybody thinks Tom is the coolest guy on this call because he's the one that brought everybody together. Right. So it's just, Tom's a guy people will remember. Hey, next time I'm thinking about, I need to connect with that guy. Tom probably knows them. That was something that really worked for me. And I would write thank you notes for no reason to people, or really small reasons. I'd write a handwritten card because people don't get a lot of those anymore. You get a lot of emails, but you get a handwritten card for, hey, just thanks for being a really cool person, or thanks for showing up to my podcast, or whatever it is. And I would also, send like little gifts and things. I mean, I just did little things that for me were more effective in making those deep connections that lasted a long time. than a LinkedIn post or something like
I love that. I love that. And Mike and I have got a mutual friend, Karan, and he's the genius at this kind of thing. He does such thoughtful things for people who come to his events or people who come to his webinars. And it's ridiculously thoughtful. And like you said, that you're going to remember that. You're going to even talk about that in years to come. Like, oh, this guy did this thank you letter and sent me this gift in the post. Like, that's way better than some LinkedIn post, which will get lost in the noise. So I totally get that. Before we come on to some of the difficult parts or the let's say the mistakes you guys have made, is there anything else, and this will be open for any of you, is there anything else you mentioned that's worked well? We've mentioned consistency, we've mentioned like depth as opposed to like going shallow. Is there anything else you guys would mention, things which have worked really well for you guys in the past?
I know I'm sure Mike and Dani have something to say, but I just think that the most important thing, and I'm going to echo a little bit about, building on what Mike was saying, authenticity is the biggest key to this. And they both embody that, because, Dani was saying like, okay, so, maybe I'm going to alienate some of my previous, they might see me travel photos, but it's all for me. It's about work, and that's just who I am. And that's the phase I'm in. And he's about 20 years younger than me. So he's a lot more energy now. So he can do that. But I think authenticity is super critical. Like, who are you in real life? Be that same person. You're great, okay? And everybody on this call has friends. There's something about everybody here that is great. And you got to be that person. And the other thing to know is, you're not going to be friends with everybody. I'm not, and that's okay. Not everybody's for everybody. That's how life is. So you got to just be you and know who you are. Just be the same person on camera as you are with your friends, with your family, whatever, right? Because I feel like there's something about humans where they can smell a rat. They're like, oh, that guy's kind of, I feel like he's kind of fake. I mean, I can tell you right now, what you're seeing is what you get. I gesticulate a lot. I'm kind of loud. Like, that's me. What I mean? And I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. But I think that's really critical. No matter what medium you choose, just be you, because you're great. And that's what people, the people that you want to meet and connect with, they're going to like you. And that's what works. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that helps you to find your niche too, right? Like, if you're trying to be broad and choose a popular subject, then you're not going to get, you're not going to be interesting to many people. But if you're like this quirky person who's obsessed with, like, I don't know, dogs and anoraks, then that's going to be a real niche kind of a subject, and people are more likely to like your stuff. Mike, Daniel, would you add anything else here?
Yeah, just the super quick to add on to Peter's. And I think so authenticity of being you is critical, but I think authenticity of you, because you have to create that consistency, you have to do this whatever the activity is, you have to do it all the time, whether it's hosting roundtables, sending cards, podcasts. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, it's going to be a pain in the ass. It's going to be a lot of work. And so if you're doing something that's not you, that you like, you get up and you're like, I don't like being on camera, but I think I have to be on camera, like, you're going to stop doing it. And that's why I'm a professional quitter. But I like to, like, experiment, realize what I don't like, and then bail. The amount of things I bailed on, and I used to really take it personally and think that it made me a failure of some kind. And my coach is like, no, you're just, like, effective at quitting. That's not a bad thing. But if you're trying to do something that's not you because you think you need to do it for the personal brand, it's going to fall off, because you're just not going to want to do the work. You're going to stress, you're going to procrastinate. You're not going to want to do it. So that's my only addition.
That's so true. Really, really good point there. And I'll come on to that in just a second. There's something I want to dig into there. But Daniel, is there anything else you'd add?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add, like, passion. Like, if you are not passionate about the topic, that the thing that you are doing, that you will have to think a lot about it, and you will have to do a lot of research, and always, like, keep thinking, iterating. So if you're not passionate about the topic that you are doing, then that's not really gonna work. And the other is, like, kind of like learning in public. So just not be afraid of, like, sharing as you learn. So even your audience community can also learn and grow with you, because a lot of people kind of expect, or even I expected, that you have to be an expert in order to start sharing. So you have to know everything, because until then you cannot share anything. I think there is a point where, of course, you can start by sharing everything immediately, but there is, like, halfway a really sweet spot where you can already start sharing as you are learning, and you can also share what you are learning, so your community and audience can learn and grow with you. So that's all.
Another really good point. And again, that comes back to the imposter syndrome that Peter spoke about earlier. Like, I think there is this sense of imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not perfect, so how can I tell people about this? But yeah, you're right. Like, everyone's on a journey, and if you're a little bit better than some people, you've got a story to tell. You've got lessons to give. Something I mentioned I wanted to bring something up. Both Dani, most of you, in fact, spoke about the tenacity, that showing up every day and not quitting. In the beginning, that's really tough. Like, in the beginning, you might be getting 3 listens on your podcast or like 6 likes on your Instagram post. Like, how did you guys push past that? Because I think that I'm also very good at quitting, as Mike said, but not always in a good way. Sometimes I quit way too soon. But how do you guys push past that and push long enough that it actually is a good enough test that this is the way I should be going?
There's a I've said this to my clients many times. Like, if first of all, as a software guy, I think that what I built is the greatest, and everybody's gonna love it. They're gonna be like, "This is the greatest," and I spent all this time, and then I realized, really late in my career, if you build it, no one will come. Marketing is about making people come, right? About making them do something that they wouldn't otherwise do. It's about battling inertia. And so it doesn't matter how great your product is. And that's sad, because we can all think about products that were way ahead of their time, and then and maybe you even heard about it, and then the company is no more. I mean, that's happened a lot. And so I think that that initial expectation of, wow, I think this pod is great, I spent all this time on it, and then you get nobody to subscribe to it. Or, geez, I wrote this book which took me 2 years, and I got 3 people to buy it. I mean, or whatever it was. It's like that is emotionally taxing. So I almost feel like, and it's sort of antithetical to creation, because if you set your expectation that nobody's going to care about what you're doing, then you probably wouldn't do it, right? But so you kind of have to fool yourself and think people are going to care. But be prepared somehow to know that you're going to put it out, and probably not very many people are going to pick it up. That's just not how it works, unless you have a brand like Amazon or Microsoft or Google or somebody, where it's like, if they put it out, people are going to write about it. But the rest of us mortals have to deal with that rejection of apathy. That said, the things about that content is that, if you think about it in terms of not what happens on day 1 or even day 30, but what happens 2 years later, the evergreen nature of the content drives those conversations much later. So that's why I think social sucks too, because no one goes back in their LinkedIn feed 2 years. No one goes even back 2 days. But I got an email a month ago from a professor at a university in the South, in the USA here, that said, I teach a marketing class, a business marketing class, and I make all my students buy your book. Do you want to give a couple of copies to me so I can share them around or whatever? And I was like, okay, wow. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that you just never know what's going to happen with something like that later on down the road. So those blog posts that get indexed, the books, the podcasts that are out there, somebody stumbles upon those very asynchronously. And I think that there's, you first perceive it's a setback, but maybe it's not. I'd love to hear what the other guys have to say about that.
Yeah, it's a great point. Let's open it to the other guys. What would you guys add to that? And just a reminder, the question was about, what was the question about? Oh yeah, about how you, that's it. How you, if you get nobody in the beginning, how do you kind of push past that and keep going?
So go ahead, Mike. Okay, so from my perspective, it's always like I try to ask questions. So basically, the first case study that I wrote, I was really happy with it. I felt like I learned a lot as a designer. I put together this new concept, this new case study. I was like, okay, this is it. This will skyrocket. It's really perfect. I shared it on Medium, and 10 people viewed it. And I think from 10 people, like 8 was me refreshing the article. So like I was like, okay, there is something here. And I tried to think about, okay, after a couple of days of like, okay, I'm terrible. I won't be a designer ever. Like, what to do? And I started to think like, how many places I've shared this article in, like how many different ways, and I never shared it with anyone. Maybe on Twitter once, and that was it. So okay, I started to look at, okay, on Medium you have these publications which are like these hundreds of thousands of followers, like these special publications that you can submit your articles into. So I looked up what's the biggest design publication out there, and it was Newsly by Envision. So it's like a sponsor thing, but it's kind of like a separate thing as well. And they have like hundreds of thousands of followers. Okay, I was like, let's try submitting there. So I submitted my article, waited a couple of days, and it got rejected. And I was like, oh, so it seems like my work is really bad because it got rejected. No one will care, like it never will get into this publication. But I was like, okay, let's ask them why. Maybe they will share something so I can learn and I can improve. So I just asked like, hey guys, why you rejected my article? And the response was the best. Basically, there was one link to a competitor in that article because of they rejected my article. So basically what I did, I just removed that one link to that competitor, submitted again, get approved immediately. And for the next day, I got like 20K views within a day. And it started skyrocketing and I started trending on one of the first like best articles on Medium in that time within those design articles. So it was really eye-opening because first initially I immediately thought my work is really bad. But after keep asking questions and trying to validate it and trying to figure it out, it turned out that it didn't really get any views. So nobody was aware that I wrote that article, and B, it was rejected because of some really independent, like just like a competitor mentioning thing, which was just a business reason, and it had nothing to do to my work. So yeah, so it was really interesting for me personally to go through these steps, because initially without these questions, I would like, okay, my work sucks and I won't do that again. So just a really different experience personally.
Such an interesting thing, and I think it's so natural, especially we're talking about personal brands here, and by the nature of a personal brand, you are the person who's behind the brand, and so it's almost impossible not to take it personally. So that's a really good example of how it felt like a personal rejection, but it was completely the opposite, and how we shouldn't maybe take it so personally. Mike, what would you add to this conversation?
Yeah, both really good insights. So I think my experience, my imposter syndrome was massive. And to anybody who doesn't, you see people online, you're like, no, they've got it figured out. They've got it figured out. They know their purpose. Everybody feels it. And if you don't feel it, you're not right. Those are the people that are like, that think they're the best and put out stuff and we all know who some of those people are on the internet. I won't say any names, but like, the people who already think that they're amazing are like, how could you be so full? Like it's very, very difficult for me to connect with that. For me, so the practical advice I would give is, no matter what you start, you're going to suck at. It's always gonna be that way. And so know that, embrace that, but then play, like experiment within the mediums, figure out what your methodology is, figure out the way that you best communicate, figure out the way that you make it come out of your body feeling simple, and then remove barriers. So for me, I was always no, I have to be the smartest in the room. I got to be the smartest in my company. I got to be able to do everything better than everyone else. Letting go of that was the best thing that ever happened to me. So I knew the podcast format was great, but then I'm like, well, who's going to edit it and write notes and publish? I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work, because for me, I'm not a detail-oriented person. I'm very scattered. I'm very eccentric in those ways. And so I was like, perfect. I'm going to talk, but someone's going to produce it. Someone's going to book the guests, figure out all the timing. Someone's going to edit it. Someone's going to publish it. Someone's going to write the show notes. And so I removed myself from all the barriers once I determined what the best medium for me was. But that came with trying to do a whole bunch of other stuff. And hey, I'm going to be a blog writer. I can't write for shit. Sorry if you're not supposed to swear, but I've just actually trained myself over the past 4 years to actually be able to write, and it's still not good, but it's slowly progressing. But it took I'm going to write this blog that's going to do this thing. I'm going to be the Instagram guy. I'm going to create video all the time and solo video all the time. I just recently started publishing solo video in the last year, but it took 5 years to actually get me to that point. So just know that whatever you put out, you're going to go back and look at it. And because you want it to be the best thing possible that can help everybody right now solve all their problems, it's not going to happen, right? So you're going to hate the content be aware of it, embrace it, but figure out whatever that medium is that makes you feel like, ooh, I think this is the best shot. And then just push really, really hard on that.
And is there any tips on like identifying that medium that might be the best shot? Is it kind of what we spoke about earlier, like the authenticity? Which one do you actually enjoy doing and feels like it comes natural, as opposed to the ones which really feel like friction?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I thought it had to be on every platform, creating for everything, and so I try to do 10 things at once, and you'll feel resistance to it. You'll be like, oh, you know what? Really don't want to get on camera today. My hair's a little bit funny. Like, you know what I mean? Like, some people just don't want to be on camera. Some people don't want their voice out there. Some people, like, for me, it's like my grammar and spelling is not good, so I don't want to write things. You know what I mean? So I think you just don't feel like you need to do it because you watched some video or someone told you need to do it. Just do what feels right. And if you feel a lot of resistance to it, it might not be the thing.
Awesome. That's really good advice. And I also really appreciate you touching upon the imposter syndrome thing. It's something that Peter mentioned earlier too. And it's definitely something I've felt a lot, and I've mentioned it before online as well. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to touch on that really briefly now. And then in a minute, we'll open up for questions. So you guys listening in, if you've got questions you're thinking about, we'll open up Q&A in about 5 minutes time. How did you guys, I mean, maybe you've already touched upon it, but how do you guys overcome that imposter syndrome? Because for me, it can be really limiting. And for me, at times it makes me give up projects and just stop motionless for a while. And like, how do you guys push past that and take action, even if you're like, this isn't gonna go somewhere, I'm a piece of crap, or whatever these thoughts that might be going through your mind are. And since you're on screen, Mike, I'll start the question with you.
Yeah, sounds good. So I felt it and feel it very strongly on a regular basis. So for me, I'm 36, so I was still of the kind of class where I was like, yeah, go to university, do all the, finish high school, go to university, get that degree, da 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 da. Like, I was a terrible student, and it wasn't because I wasn't trying. My brain does not learn in that way. So finished, barely got through high school, did 1 semester of college. It was the third offshoot of the school that I had applied for. Like, we have this random program that we guess will let you join. And I mean, it was a joke. And I went through a phase where I was in sales for a long time. And then I got a job in an insurance company, and I thought, this is my life. Like, no degree, who's going to hire me? This is where I'm stuck. And when I broke free of that, it was because I had a panic attack / nervous breakdown in front of my office, hysterical, crying, shaking, because my body was like, you're doing the wrong thing. You're not supposed to be here. But I didn't have entrepreneurs around me ever. I didn't have any, there were some people on YouTube, but this is 9-10 years ago. So it was like, I didn't have that role model. I didn't have anything. So I feel it really, really strongly, but I also embrace it because you see these, and you have to remember and celebrate your successes. I think that's the best way to get around it. So every once in a while, I see how bigger agencies are doing stuff, and I'm like, it's so clunky and cumbersome, and it's just such a stupid way of doing it. And I'm like, no, we don't have to follow it. And a part of me thinks, like, maybe because I didn't learn it in school, A, B, and C, this is how this works. I'm just like, we're just going to do it this other way because we want to. And like, I see how I've built something for myself now where, like, I don't work that much. I make more money than I ever thought I could. I like, my personal life is amazing in terms of, like, I just get to do activities and get to, like, relax and enjoy life now. And so I'm like, for every time it creeps up, I'm like, yeah, but you figured it out and you get to do this cool thing that you love doing, and you get to spend your time the way you want to spend it now. So it's like, you combat it over time, but it doesn't go away. Anytime I'm thinking about taking on something new or something, whatever, immediately it's like, you can't do that. Who are you? It doesn't go away. But I think documenting and thinking about and remembering the things that you've done, because you do these little incremental things that make your business and your life better. And when you can go back and say, oh, so journaling is huge for me, because it's like, oh yeah, remember that time I sold that, 6-figure contract that I never thought I'd sell something for 6 figures ever in my life. I didn't even think the idea of even me making that amount of money in a year was not fathomable 10 years ago. So it's like, oh yeah, you're a loser, but someone just gave you $140,000 to do something that's easy for you. It's like, oh wait, cool, I actually do know what I'm doing. So celebrating your victories, even if they're very, very small. And I think journaling, so you can kind of keep track of where you've been.
Amazing. Thanks so much for opening up about that. And plus one for the journaling thing. I journal daily, and it really helps to keep track of your mindset and seeing what's going on the highs and the lows. Peter, you mentioned it earlier. Do you want to touch upon that, about how you deal with imposter syndrome?
Sure. Yeah. And on the journaling thing, I do that as well. And I hardly ever go back and look at my journal, but it's not really about that. It's about just getting it from the swirling here to the paper or the craft, if that's what you use, not to turn this into a pitch. But that's really what it's about, right? It's about getting it out of here, because now your mind can rest, right? Instead of being up at 1 a.m. thinking. So big fan of that too. I kind of okay. So another personal story, not as sensitive and transparent as Mike's. Who, by the way, thank you for sharing, Mike. I started playing golf 4 years ago. All the people around me play golf. I never had any time for it, and I kind of was like, "Gosh, who has time for that?" You kind of get bit by the bug if it's golf, whatever. Anyway, long story short, golf is one of those games. It's very, very simple, but it's very hard to do consistently. And so, sometimes I find myself standing there on the tee box and 3 people around me I don't know, and I'm really nervous, like I'm going to hit the worst ball in the world here. And what I try to remember is that I have done this before successfully. Like I have hit a straight shot really long and really straight before. So there's no reason mechanically I can't do that same thing. Now, there are lots of reasons, and I don't hit them all straight, right? But the point is like thinking about that when you're in your moment of mini crisis of like, gosh, do I really have what it takes to do this? You think, I've done this before. Mike said, I've sold a job like this before, and not only did I sell it, I successfully executed it. I have published something, and other people have taken notice before, and they will again. It's one of those things that you start to believe, not based on some delusional fantasy, but based on the track record that you kind of have a blind spot for unless you really look back. And a lot of people, that are like us, I'm just going to say, like, and probably the people on this call are really looking forward. They're thinking, what am I going to do next? And how am I going to make more money? And how am I going to get to that point in my career? And that's all great stuff. That's what this discussion is about. But there is a moment where you can kind of stop and go, okay, so the only real indicator of future performance is what you did in the past. So turn around, look at the house you live in. Did you ever think you would live in that house when you were a little kid? Look at the money you're making. Did you ever think that was in your, you know what I mean? Most people are going to say, I never thought I would be as successful as I am. And I kind of want to keep it a secret, because I don't want anybody to know that I didn't have this all planned out. It just sort of unfolded for me. Do you know what I mean? But that's really what it's about, is, take a moment, and then you'll believe it for yourself that in the future it's possible, I think.
That's a good reminder. And I had a coach at one point who said something similar. Like, we're so obvious at remembering our failures, but we don't always necessarily remember our successes in the same way. So he deliberately made me kind of list whenever time I had a success, and list whenever somebody said something nice about me or my work. And so when you're feeling like crap, you can look back and you can see these things and be like, oh, actually, I'm not so bad after all. Just before I change to Q&As, Daniel, is there anything you wanted to add here?
Yeah, just a really quick one. Basically, it applies to design, but probably it applies to most things, that as you're learning something, your taste develops in a different rate than what you are actually capable of. So basically, you will feel that you will know what good is because you have the taste for it. And you will also know that your work is not that, because you are not at the level. So really just trying to close the loop between your taste and your actual work is really, really challenging. And that's where I also use like writing. So if I can specifically say why my work and my design is not good enough, then I can improve. And that's where you can like try to close the gap between your taste and what you're actually producing and creating. And the other thing is like I feel like, and especially for myself, the big challenge was like my mental like self-talk, because I feel like I'm kind of, usually I'm the toughest on myself. So I'm really tough on my work and what I'm doing and how I'm doing. And sometimes it's good to remind that, would I say those things in the exact same way to my best friend? And if not, then why am I saying those things to myself? So sometimes like saying like, your work is shit. Would you say that to your best friend or the exact same way, or maybe not? So then just like keeping your mental well-being is really important in the process, because you are trying to get so much done in so little time, and then just keeping in mind that your mental well-being is really really important. So how you talk to yourself, how you think about yourself is really affecting how you feel, and then ultimately like what you create and how you create. So yeah, that's what I've learned.
Brilliant reminders. Both are really valuable. I think even Neil Gaiman is famous for saying the first one you mentioned, where like you as a creator are completely separate from your idols, the people who are creating the books or designing the things. And that gap is huge. And you're gonna have to just slowly chip away at that gap by practice, by being tenacious. Cool. We've got about 10 minutes left, so this leaves some time for Q&A. Does anyone on this call want to come on screen or ask in the chat? So we've got one from Sam Baldwin. He said, do you think companies should encourage their staff to build their own personal brands? So what are you guys, open that up to everyone, whoever wants to chip in. Do you think it's a good idea?
I do. I do, because I think that the first thing is that I find many companies, leaders, whatever, are a bit delusional, don't accept the fact that every dance has to end somewhere. In the very best case, the person that works for you retires out in 20 years. But in most of the time, they're going to be going off to another company. And what you want first, so you have to accept that reality. And the second thing is, if you continue to invest in your team and really, say, hey, I really, not only I want to know who you are and who your kids are and what really motivates you. Like I was a very, one-to-one kind of person with my team. I tried to know a lot about them. When their birthday is and stuff like that, really investing in the things that are important to them. But, you really want to just train them to take your job eventually. So how do you do that? How do you prep them to take the job you have? Well, if the job you're doing is building the brand of yourself or your company, well, then turn around and tell them how to do it. Now, where it gets a little tricky is on social media and curation of social media. And that was going to be kind of one of my points about this, is like, if you're going to set yourself up for success, you have to be really vigilant about what you like, comment on, and share, because we're talking about a brand here, and we're also talking about you. And there's and to some extent, you're projecting an image of yourself. It's like you go to Facebook and everybody's on the best vacation of their life, that kind of thing, right? But there's a thing about that. When you comment on something political or whatever, this is just a chance that somebody that you really want to matter to is going to take that the wrong way. So then you got to kind of ask yourself, was that worth it for me to comment on that 2 years ago? Yeah, I had my say and it's a free speech, but do you know what I mean? So I feel like there's a balance there. You really have to be thoughtful about. That's where it gets tricky with employees, because if they're out there building their personal brand apart from your brand, it is one of those things that if they say things or they start to post things that reflect poorly, then you know what I mean? It gets tricky. So I think having some guideposts is good, and at least maybe suggestions. But in terms of just how do I put you out front of my company? And look, Tom, you're representing Craft today. Are you the CEO of Craft? Right. So that's the point, right? Is that obviously that's their perspective, and it's a good thing. I think it's a very good thing for your team, for your morale, for the company in general.
Great points. Thanks for sharing, Peter. Mike, Daniel, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, so I think that Peter's perspective on this is spot on, and I think as a leader, leaving people in the best possible scenario, like I say that, I can't compare because my team is very, very, very small in comparison. But anybody that comes into my ecosystem, we work with a ton of different freelancers, and we're always constantly like, how can you build this up? How can you get to the next level? Because that leaves a lasting impression. To me, that's legacy. That's your network in the future. Someone leaving for the next venture, for the next thing that they're going to do themselves, or the next company they work for, them loving and appreciating you is, even if nothing ever happens from it, it's still a win. it's like you've left someone in a better position than when you brought. That's amazing. But what typically does end up happening is it creates other opportunities. You say, hey, I now need someone who can do this. I now have a whole bunch of advocates out there that are like, yeah, let me load you up with whatever this thing is, because like I love you and I appreciated what you did for me. So I think that's perfect. And then I think in terms of, should everyone have their personal brand? I think in the economy of work, the way that it's going, I think a lot of companies are going to be happy to have independent contractors instead of employees. I think we're seeing, with the gig economy, I'm not the smartest guy. I don't know. I mean, I use it. I don't know that much about it, but I think I'm seeing even people that are like, hey, company, I would like to leave the company, do the exact same work for you as an independent contractor. So taking the risk, the liability of me being an employee, and if you need to get rid of me, you need to get rid of me. I want more money. I want flexibility of time and space. And people are going to actual corporations now and saying, let me go. I'll leave so you don't have any liability. Pay me more, lock me in, I'll do this thing. If I do a great job, great. You can let me go at any time, but I want these benefits. And so I think as that continues to grow, which I think it will, I think having some kind of a personal brand is good. So I think, yes, building that in for the karma of it and for a little bit about future of work pieces, I think it's a good idea.
Great points. And Dani, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, so basically what I've noticed, it's a tricky question because, yeah, right. So the benefits of like building a personal brand, I also prefer, I think it comes in waves. So it's always great if you have like a period of your life where you can spend time at working for yourself or building a personal brand, because that's where you can learn the most, because that's where you will be the most passionate. You are building something for yourself. So you will learn exponentially during that time. But also from the other perspective, it's reasonable. Like some people can expect that if you're working for some company, they would want you for your whole time. They want your whole attention. They don't really want you to focus on anything else. However, if you start focusing on your own things, you can learn a lot more. So they can bring it back to your day job as well. And you have a much wider perspective. You're much more passionate, and then you have more knowledge to offer, basically. So it's a tricky thing to balance between the two. But I think it's definitely worth to at least have a period in your life where you can also focus on something for yourself. So you have a much bigger chance of growing and learning in a much different perspective, rather than always working for someone else, where you can also learn, but it's a different experience. So yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, definitely. Good point. And I think also, as let's take yourself, Dani, if you were to post something which got big in a design crowd and your title is product designer at Craft, that's also promotion for Craft, right? Like that's, maybe you'll one day go on somewhere else, but for that duration that you're at Craft, they see your work, like, wow, this guy is working for Craft. It's that promotion for the brand too. So I think it can be win-win in that kind of case.
Absolutely. And ideas happen in the most like random places. So maybe if you're working on your own project, you will have an idea of how to do something that you've been struggling at work, or the other way around. So it's always like the more things that you can work on, like probably the more chance that you have like to gain new ideas and apply that to elsewhere. So yeah.
Definitely. So we've got a few questions. Probably if you've got any more questions, throw them in now because we haven't got that long left. Next question was from Wayne, and they ask, whose personal brand inspires you, or who do you consider to be a role model? So Dani, since you're on screen, have you got anybody who comes to mind when you hear that question?
I only like I could say like designers such as like Mank too or Tobias van Schneider. So they are the traditional designers, like really iconic designers, but mostly within the Twitter, Instagram, Google community. So probably it won't mean too much to anyone else. But basically, I think what's important here is like finding your niche and just trying to find the leaders or the people that you look up to, and have a list, like follow their work, see what they do. So it will be different to each like segment and each niche is. It is important to be aware and do a proper research and trying to find the circle of friends that you really look up to within that community. So then you can interact with them, learn from them, and usually these people are really really nice to talk to. So I definitely encourage you to find your own heroes and try to connect with them.
Brilliant point. Mike, Peter, would you add anything to that question?
Yeah, so for me, Alex Hormozy has been interesting. He's really picked up his trajectory on social. He's founder of a company called Gym Launch. I love the hyper transparency, and I love how it's just like the true definition of just like give everything away. I will tell you everything I know about this thing, because ultimately, and that's how I approach this type of stuff, because even if I give you all the answers, you're probably not going to be able to do it yourself anyway. So the idea of like, it's going to take away business if I give away the best ideas, or if I tell someone exactly how all this stuff works, it's crap. I mean, some people will, here's the thing, some people will take it, they will use they'll use what you told them, and then they'll do it themselves and it'll work. They weren't going to be your customers anyway. They were going to find a way to figure it out. So like, I just, for me, I've been, really, really into him. He's a very interesting guy.
Awesome.
I love Rick Beato. I'm a music guy. I play piano and stuff. And so on my lunch hour, I will often watch a guy named Rick Beato, and I put his link in the chat there. It's an example. First of all, it's about giving it away, just like Mike was talking about there. What he knows about music is, unbelievable, right? The theory, his ability to just sight read, just to play something by ear, he's incredible. But he really proves the point that if it's good content, people have an attention for long form content. There's this kind of, I think, a myth about, well, gosh, a podcast has to be 5 minutes because nobody's got that kind of time anymore. But that's not true at all. He does these hour-long episodes breaking down a Steely Dan song. One song for an hour, right? Because if you like Steely Dan and you like music and you like Rick, you're going to listen for an hour. You just will. And so I think that's kind of the deep thing I was talking about, right? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to buy into this idea that it's only the attention economy. You know what I mean? That you can only do this for 10 minutes and then, by the way, everybody else is off. They're not the people you want to connect with anyway. So anyway, thank you, Wayne, for that question. That was great.
Yeah, brilliant question. Thanks for your answer too. That's really, really good point. We've got like a minute left, so I just got one more question from Flo, and then we can wrap up. Flo asks, did you start with a clear vision for your own brand, or did it just happen as you went because you were passionate about it? So I know that's probably got lots of levels, that question, but if you can answer it in however you can, that'd be great. You can go first, Peter, if you want.
I'll go really quick. I just wanted to play to my strengths. Mine is a one-to-one connection, like I'm having here. I did what felt natural. It's the things that didn't feel natural, I just stopped doing because I just didn't want to, and it just didn't feel right. And I would encourage everybody to really evaluate. Think about how many weeks you have left on the planet. I was thinking about that this morning. I think I have about 2,000 weeks. Of these weeks that I have left, is this how I want to spend that one day? Doing something that I hate? No. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I love that. Mike, Dani, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll be super quick as well. I think similar to the way that your business looks today, it's very different than like this theory, right? I had this thesis that people are going to come for this idea or this reason or this product or this service. And there was a million iterations and little decisions and tweaks that had to go into it to make it the thing that worked. I think it's extremely rare that someone's like, this product in this exact format is how people are going to love it. And without any feedback loop, without any testing, it just became a thing. I can't imagine that that's ever happened. Maybe it has, I don't know. But I think it's the same with the personal brand thing. It's like, we all had this vision because we saw someone else and we're like, what they have, I think that's what I want because I like look up to that person. And then you start doing it, realizing like what goes into it, what work, what processes, and you're like, ooh, no, don't like those things at all, out. And so it's like, it is an iterative process. And I think the final product is often very different from the initial thesis.
Brilliant. Really good points.
Yeah.
Dani, would you add anything?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So I always have a vision for the thing that I can impact and I can change and have an effect on. So for example, with the work, I always have like what I'm looking up to and where like the quality of work I like to represent. But then after that, what will happen or who will contact or what the future will bring, it is out of my control. So for that, I'm all for the ride. But for what I can impact, I really have a vision that I can work towards and I can actually do something with on a day-to-day basis and see what the opportunities bring, basically.
Right. I hope that answers your question, Flo. That's something which I always get stuck as well, is trying to find the perfect plan. So it's good to know all of you guys are iterating along the way. That's the end. Thanks so much for coming. Just let us know, where, since you've got personal brands, where can people find you? Where should they follow you if they want to follow you? And I'll let you quickly give yourself an outro before we wrap up. Dani, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so feel free to connect me on Instagram at Daniel Korpai or on Twitter. Probably those places where I'm the quickest to reply. So if you have any questions or you want to chat more, just feel free to let me know.
Awesome. And Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the easiest way is, and I'll just drop it in the chat or whatever, is on LinkedIn. Just love to connect with you. And yeah, I'm kind of like Mike. It's like, you just give it away as much as you can, because I think that the universe and the world has a way of rewarding people that give it away.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Mike. Sorry, Peter. Mike, you're next.
So if you're looking for some really helpful stuff around like marketing and pricing and all that stuff, my email list is probably the best place, mikemoll.co. You can sign up there. And then if you like, I am a full-time traveler, so I literally don't have a home. I literally live out of one suitcase. And so Instagram, I'm kind of, always something interesting happening over there. So it's a little bit more fun, a little bit more active that way. So at the Mike Moll, if you want to connect over there, and I'll let you know if I end up in your part of the world. I probably will.
Amazing. Thanks so much, you guys, for coming. I'll link to all these in the description on YouTube at some point. And yeah, just thanks to everyone who came to watch as well. Like, it's been I've learned a lot from you guys, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights with us. Enjoy the rest of your days, nights, evenings, and everything. And I'll see you guys around. See you soon.
Great
Bye-bye.
job.
Thanks a lot for coming.